Alright guys, today's video is all about welding tanks. What I'm going to do is show you how you can find deals in your local area for getting your welding tanks for free. One of the tricks I've used for a while is searching out my local deals. And this is a great way to get your tanks for free and to make some extra money on the side. Sometimes I use this to fund projects that I want to build, but I really don't want to affect my family's finances, so I'll search out these deals, make a little extra money, and then fund a project that I want to do. So this is a great way. I'll show you all my tips and tricks for how to search these deals out. I've been doing this for a while and it's worked out really well for me. So I'm going to share these secrets with you. So stay with me and I'll show you how I do it. Okay? Thanks.
Alright, let's get right into this. So one of the ways that you can find good deals on compressed tanks, welding tanks, is that you don't look for welding tanks. You look for tanks that people have no idea what they're worth. And one of the things people don't understand is that these cylinders, these compressed gas cylinders, are all the same. And it does not matter whether you have an oxygen, helium, argon, CO2, all of the full-size tanks are interchangeable at your dealer. So all you have to do is find one that is a reasonable price and then take it in and exchange it for whichever gas that you want. A lot of people think that you still need to have the exact gas and exchange it in. The other thing they don't understand is that if their tank is out of hydrostatic test, that they can still exchange it. And the price of steel has gone through the roof, and so the demand for these tanks is very high. So the dealers themselves don't quibble that much anymore. They'll charge you a fee. Most of the places in town that I live here in Tucson go from about $10 to $15 up to $50. So obviously I use the dealers that only charge me $10 to $15. Now, the fact that the steel prices have gone through the roof is one of the reasons there's money to be made in buying used tanks off of the sites like Craigslist. And so what people don't realize is that these tanks have gone from being worth about $100 to $150 a piece in the last 5 years to, when you go to buy a new one, the cheapest in town is about $485 and the most is about $550 for one of these tanks filled. So that's a sticker shock for a lot of people when they go to buy a welding tank, and most of the time at that point they go looking to find one used. But most of the time they search for the exact gas that they're looking for, whether it be argon or argon CO2 mix for most of the welders. But then they realize that there's very few of those for sale because most of the welders have the gas they need and they're not selling it. So that is why it's a marketplace that you can actually sell your tanks for a reasonable price and still make quite a bit of money. And here's a perfect example of what people find when they go looking. Here's one of the tanks you can get on Amazon, shipped to your house for free. It's 125 cubic foot, and they're selling this for $363. So when you sell the same size tank for $250 full, they see it as a great deal. So that is one of the reasons you can sell these quite quickly around on your local marketplace. Okay, so let's get into where you can find these deals. One of the best places that I've found is Craigslist. They were for a long time my go-to place to find the best deals on these tanks. Recently though, I've been having even better luck on OfferUp. It's a new place to buy and sell, and the place has really taken off, and it's for some reason a really great place to find these tanks that people have no idea, what they're worth. One of the other places that I've had good luck is the Facebook local marketplace. This is another little known place to find good deals, and it's not as good as the other two for me, but I do search it out because occasionally I find a gem in there and I'm able to snatch it up. It's like a little nugget of gold just laying on the ground, and there it is on Facebook Marketplace. I'll show you some examples here. of how I do my searches, so you can see what the best parameters are or the best search words to look for. Alright, so here are my most effective search words that I use on Craigslist, OfferUp, and Facebook Marketplace. So these are in order for how effective they are. The ones that have worked the best for me at the beginning: tanks, tank, oxygen, all those in order. And I typically do those searches just as the single word, because a lot of times people mislabel things, and that's where you find some of the greatest deals. For me, tank has been like the #1 as far as what people put in, and a lot of time they'll just put compressed gas tank or oxygen tank, and so usually between oxygen or tank I usually find them. Cylinders is more rare, or cylinder, and bottle is even further down, but tank is the #1 that I get the most hits on for really well priced. So you can see this list, you can write it down, use these, and you'll have good luck in your local marketplaces to find these bottles. One of the things I should mention is that you do see acetylene in the list of search parameters. I put it in there because that is one of the ways I have found tanks for a really cheap price, but I want to make clear that you do not want acetylene tanks. Acetylene tanks are not a high pressure tank. They're a very low pressure tank, and they're made out of much thinner steel, and the welding shops will not take them in trade for a welding gas, one of the high pressure gases like argon or CO2 mix. So stay away from acetylene. That's a good way. I got burned one time on a small tank. Luckily I paid 20 bucks for it, and I still can't get rid of the thing. Anyway, it's just art in my garage now, so stay away from acetylene and you'll be alright. Alright, now I'm going to show you some of the examples of the deals I've gotten just in the last couple months. Most of them have been on OfferUp, but I will show you the first one I got in, I believe it was January, was this CO2 tank. And I was able to buy one of these tanks for $175 with the CO2 regulator, which I'm actually now using as my portable regulator to go on my small tank for my MIG setup when I need to mobile weld. I just carry the tank with me with that little regulator, and it's been working great. The tank itself, I figured the regulator is worth $25, so I figure I had $150 in the tank. One of the things that most people don't know is that these are full-size 300 cubic foot CO2 tanks. They're made out of aluminum. A lot of people don't realize that these are exchangeable for the full-size steel tanks. You should make sure with your local gas supplier in your town before you do this, but I have never had a problem. Whatever size I get of the aluminum tanks, I'm able to exchange them for the steel tanks. So this I took right down, swapped over, and even though I had about 150 in the tank, I was still able to get it filled for under $200, and I sold the tank for $340. So I only made $90 on this one, but it still was a profitable deal, and I got a regulator out of the deal. So okay, so here's an example of a really good deal on a helium tank. Helium is one of those tanks that people buy whether they're having a big party or whatever. They have a flower shop or something, and they fill up balloons for a while, things go south, and it just sits in the garage. And I've made quite a bit of money on the side just finding these helium tanks. Most people get them, they sit around, they're tired of looking at it, and they'll sell it for cheap. This tank right here is worth $385 if you had to go buy it new. They're selling it for $150 on Craigslist, and almost everybody prices theirs higher than what they'll take, so most of the time you can get this for $100 to $125 for this tank, which is an amazing deal, and at that price you can sell it filled for about $250 for one of these tanks this size. Okay, so here's an example of a crazy good deal on Craigslist. This guy's got a ton of tanks sitting in his garage. He had a total of 7 of the full-size large tanks. When I see this, I see gold nuggets laying on the ground. This is an amazing deal. Unfortunately, he had it listed under welding tanks, which many people are looking for that. So there was quite a frenzy around this, and I was only able to get a couple of these tanks before everything got sold out within just a couple days. But that's still an example of what's available out there. Sometimes you find people that just have a whole bunch of tanks, they shut down a business, and they store them for a while, and then after a while they just want to dump these things and get them out of their garage. Alright, so here's a deal that I dug up on OfferUp in February. When I found this, I was looking at a diamond ring that I just found on the side of the street, because you look at this and you go, $110 for 3 tanks. I bought all 3 of these. I did not quibble on the price with this guy. I just said I'll take it, and I drove down there and I couldn't load it in my truck fast enough. $110 for a full-size tank, and then a 150 cubic foot tank and a small acetylene tank. He even threw in the hoses and the oxyacetylene torch set that was with it. This is one of those that you don't find very often, but when you do, you need to grab it quick, because this will not last long. When I found this, you can see that it had been on OfferUp for a week, which kind of blew my mind that people hadn't picked up on this yet, because a lot of people aren't looking for acetylene tanks, and that's one of the reasons I think, because this one was mislisted, that people were not looking. Had he put welding tanks or something oxyacetylene, something like that, I think it would have gone really fast. But still, that's one of those that you don't want to wait around. You call, grab that thing up, and get out of there. Alright, so here's the ad for those 2 tanks, the large one and the mid-size 150 cubic foot that I put in Craigslist just a couple days after. I had to take those 2 big tanks down, get them refilled, and I put them on Craigslist. I had them listed for $350 for the large tank, and I think I had $275 on the mid-size tank. I ended up selling the large tank for $325, and the small tank I sold for $250. You can see that there is quite a bit of profit to be made in this. It did cost me almost $100. I think it was like $94 to get both of these tanks filled. So I had 110 in the tanks and like $94, so I had just a hair over $200 in these tanks, and I sold them for $575. So that's a perfect example of what is possible. And when you need to get a new welding tank, if you just do this a couple times, you will have a free tank for yourself, and you will have made some money on your own to do whatever you want, buy welding supplies or steel for projects, things like that, because that's what I do with it. You will notice that I fill my tanks with argon CO2 mix. I have found that this particular mix, argon CO2, the 75-25 mix, is the fastest seller of all the welding gases. So if you want to turn the fastest profit and get your money back, this is the gas that I found sells the fastest on Craigslist. I have tried argon, I've tried just straight CO2, and I can usually sell those, but nowhere near as fast as just doing the argon CO2 MIG mix. And it's all I fill now. When I want to turn a profit for a bottle really fast, I have it filled with CO2 argon mix. Alright, so here's another deal that I got in February near the end. This was on OfferUp, and this person had 3 full-size O2 tanks. You can only see one, but behind the wall there was 2 more. You can see in the ad that they even say they had 2 more. So I went there, and she had all 3 of them sitting in the back wall in the backyard, and I offered her $250 for all 3 tanks. So I would just take them, get them off her hands. She took my offer of $250, and I loaded them in my truck. And then you'll notice right next to the large bottle there's a small 60 cubic foot nitrogen tank. I asked her if she would take $20 for that, and I got that as well. So that is my small tank that I use for portable welding. So I kept that. I basically got that for free, because the other 3 tanks, I sold all 3 of them for $300 to $325 a piece. So this was probably the best deal that I got all spring so far. And you can see that it's pretty easy to find these things on OfferUp or Craigslist. Here's another one that I got on OfferUp just a couple weeks ago. I didn't barter with the guy. I just went and bought it for $100, exactly what he was asking. And then I took it down and refilled it, and here's my ad the same day for $240. I sold that the very next day, so I had it in my possession for about 24 hours, and it sold for my asking price of $240. So it cost me about $35 to get it filled, so I made about $105 profit on that one for basically the time it took me to drive down, pick up the bottle, take it to the welding shop, and get it filled. So here's like the holy grail on Craigslist. If you find this, just get up as much money as you can scrape up and drive to this guy's house. Here's a guy who's selling a whole bunch of cylinders all at once. His prices are from $30 to $190 OBO. When usually somebody has this many tanks, they will usually make you a deal for multiple tanks. If you say, hey, if I buy 5 of these or 3 of these, will you cut me a break on the price? Generally, you're able to get a few of these tanks for around $100 to $125 is what I've found. The most I usually spend for a full-size tank is $150. That's kind of my limit for being able to make a profit and turn it around. That way I end up with a free tank after I sell 2 or 3 of these. Alright, I want to talk to you a little bit about tank markings, because this will help you sometimes be able to haggle the price down a little bit. This tank is my argon tank for my TIG welder, and you can see that it says 1 and then some numbers and letters and 99. What this is the last hydrostatic test that this tank had. This tank is just a standard tank, and it's out of hydrostatic test. So this one's going to cost some extra money when I go to get it refilled, because it is. You can see that it was made in 1948 was the first test on this. So that is a very old tank, but it's a US Army tank, and so those are some of the best tanks you can find out there. So don't be afraid if you find an old tank like that, because most of the places, if it's a US Army tank, they don't care. They'll take it and do a hydrostatic test on it, because they're very high quality tanks. Now here's the next tank, is my CO2 Argon mix, and you can see that it has some different markings. It has the test date, which is on the left side is the month, and the right side of the letters is the year. And so when you find a tank that has a plus next to the date, that means that the tank was tested and it's able to be filled 10% higher than regular. When you see it has a star and a plus, that means it's able to be filled 10% over filled, as well as it's a 10-year hydrostatic test. That means it's a really high quality tank, and that it's able to go 10 years in between its testings. So when you see one like my argon tank that has nothing next to it, that's good for 5 years. When you see one like this on my argon tank, my CO2 mix tank, you'll see that it has a star, so that one's good for 10 years. This one was done in 2010, so it's good until August of this year, 2020. So I won't have to get that one, because I'll use this thing up before then. But just be advised that that if it's out of hydrostatic test, you're going to have to pay extra for that when you turn your tank in. So call around if you have one of those tanks. If you pick one up for cheap, know that you need to just shop around and figure out which welding supply shop will take it with the least amount of charge for a hydrostatic test. And if you have any questions about this, the markings or the time for hydrostatic testing and things like that, go ahead and leave them in the comment section, and I'll try and answer them as quick as I can. Alright,
guys, so that's it for my methods on how I get my welding tanks for free. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something and got something out of it. If you did, I appreciate any comments you want to make. Please let me know if you have any questions. Put them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up, and I would appreciate it if you subscribe. I would enjoy hearing from you about anything you'd want to talk about. And so please go ahead and communicate with me through the comments, and I'll get back to you real quick. All right, thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next video.